JKB back with another episode. Today on the show, I'm reviewing Blue Fire. Thank you so much to the dev for sending over the review copy. Right off the top, I want to say thank you for watching, but I think 65% of you watch my show without subscribing. I would really appreciate if you guys could subscribe. I'm going to be doing videos constantly for the next 6 months, and I hope you enjoy them. I'll try to cover everything that I can. So thank you so much for watching. If you've ever been wondering what you would get if you took Hollow Knight and turned it into a 3D platformer, and then took some Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, including its targeting system, and maybe a little bit of a Souls-like game, and threw it into a pot, well, you get Blue Fire. When you think back to some of the classic platforming games out there, you think about the jumping mechanics because, well, that's the most important mechanic in a game that is designed around jumping. And in a game like this, turning Hollow Knight into a 3D platformer, it's brilliant. However, it's not perfect. When I think about the platforming in Blue Fire, I think it's just almost to perfection. However, it does feel a little light. And in terms of the combat, you also get the same sensation of it almost being something that you can consider perfect. So in terms of the combat and the platforming, both of which do get better as you start to unlock certain abilities in the game. For example, when you start the game, you do not have the ability to wall run. However, as you get further into the game and unlock that ability, levels start to react to the abilities that you have. And at times, you start to get abilities and they get over the top, and the game becomes extremely fun at that point because you're zooming through levels with amazing precision while doing amazing aerial combat attacks on enemies, and I just have a blast playing it at that level. However, it's only around the middle of the game when it hits its stride. I think a lot of people out there looking for an action platformer should be looking at this game. Now, in terms of it on the Switch, I don't think this is the best port of the game. It's probably best on PC because the Switch does suffer from frame rate issues. And of course, those types of issues in these types of games do not mix well, especially when you're trying to land on a platform. Dealing with a lower frame rate at times randomly is very annoying. When it comes down to the enemy types and the combat, I feel there's a large variety of different enemies in the game, and I love the art design. I do have to say that the combat at times does feel clunky. I do like the fact that your dash button is also available to you mid-air. This means you'll slam into the enemy's faces with your swords, even if you're in a jump. So it's almost like a magnet towards the enemies, which keeps the combat and the motion of this game going, because the motion of this game is probably the most impactful part of the game. When you start to understand the motion and the jumping and the platforming and the attacks, when that comes together, you'll have the most fun out of this game. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of upgrades, and I don't want to spoil any because while I am talking a little negative about this game in terms of its clunkiness and the frame rate, I do still recommend you pick up this game to play because it is a very difficult challenge at times, and it has replay value in terms of its platforming. I do want to give you an example of the title screen music because it's absolutely beautiful. Check this out. I do want to bring up that some people might find this to be a little floaty. When you get to the edge of a cliff and you jump at the last second and you think you're not going to make it, well, the good news is you can grab onto the ledge and pull yourself up. You can also wall jump off of a wall and have the ability to dash once more. So this gives you an extra little mechanic to get through some of the more difficult parts of the game. One other mechanic I want to bring up is the shield. While it's cool to be able to use a shield in combat, I would highly suggest to use your dash button to be able to dodge some of the larger attacks from these enemies. Because the shield stops you in place, at the beginning of the game, you sort of get the sensation you don't want to use the shield unless you're getting absolutely hammered by an enemy, because it just doesn't feel great. So once again, I would highly recommend to play this game with the dash maneuver as a strategy to avoid being attacked by enemies. Lastly, I just want to bring up the fact that there's no map, so this means that you will be backtracking a lot and getting lost. There were times where it was a little frustrating. I had to go back through part of the level, but if you're into a platforming game of such, you're going to have a good time regardless of that fact. Overall, it sounds like this is a negative experience. However, it comes together to create a very beautiful artistic game that I really do recommend everyone plays. I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. The negatives here that really knock off the 2 points are the fact that the frame rate on the Nintendo Switch is horrendous at times, and in an action platformer where it's the most important part, it fails miserably. So hopefully we get some sort of patch that's going to fix the frame rate, and if that's the case, then this is a near perfect experience other than the clunky combat. So in closing, I do recommend it to the people out there that loved Hollow Knight. This is just a 3D version of that with its own unique storyline, of course, and you do get a small feeling of Legend of Zelda, mostly due to the locking system in place here, because it's directly out of like Wind Waker or any of the other Zelda games. So thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you on the next episode of JKB.